Welcome back to our conversation with Boston City Councilor Ruthzee Louijeune. She topped the ticket in the at-large City Council race earlier this month. And, Councilor, you say you have the votes, and I don't doubt that you have the votes to be elected City Council President when the new council is sworn in January. Ed Flynn, who's currently Council President, has pushed back hard against incivility in the conduct of some members of the council. Will you be doing the same?
It's incredibly important that we continue to set a tone of collegiality, of working together on the city council. Voters care about a city council that is fixing potholes, that is working on issues of lights and trash. And so we need to be able to do that.
Let me interrupt you. Why haven't we had that?
I think these last 2 years, and it's been my first term on the city council, which was a really interesting entry into public service. It's just been really hard. You know, COVID prevented the collegiality from really building in the beginning. There's a lot of staff changes within the city council staff office itself. There were city councils running for other elections. Redistricting, which is always a hard political fight. All of that happening within one term is a lot for anybody.
Let me add one other thing. That the federal judge who threw out the initial redistricting plan earlier this year cited in her ruling, she quoted one of your colleagues as saying that, you know, one of your colleagues of color, saying that, you know, for years we've been on the outs, now we're in, and I'm paraphrasing her, but basically it's payback time. Is that present? Is that a reality, that kind of sentiment?
I don't recall and remember that language. What I will say is that we and the city of Boston need to continue to push Boston forward. You know, there's this language that I don't use about old Boston, new Boston. I use the language, this is the true Boston. Boston has always, for a very long time, not always, but has for the last, I believe, 2 decades, been a majority people of color city. So when we see a city council that reflects that diversity, that linguistic diversity, that cultural diversity, that racial diversity, that's Boston. And so we need to make sure that our city, that our districts and our elected officials represent that diversity. Redistricting is always going to be a big political battle. I'm grateful that we've had the work of those who've come before us for lay the groundwork for things like the Voting Rights Act to ensure that communities that have often been sidelined are centered when we're talking about redistricting. And we have the Constitution that we must abide by. And sometimes those are tricky, and they can be tricky, especially for new councilors or for folks who haven't experienced redistricting. I, as an attorney, having worked on redistricting cases, I sort of had that advantage of knowing how much in the muck redistricting can put us. Yeah. And I think for everyone, you know, folks were inciting the troubles. There was all sorts of acrimony, right, because you know, there's also a lot of self-interest in redistricting for elected officials. As an at-large city councilor, for my political interest, the lines don't matter, but they do for other elected officials, and so it ends up being a really fraught moment.
We have less than a minute left. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Single out one thing you think Mayor Wu is doing right and one thing that she needs to fix or improve on.
So I think, you know, I really think Mayor Wu has a really good framing that I often use, is that we need to make sure that the residents can trust us to do the small and big things. They won't trust us with the bigger things like climate justice, like solving this affordable housing crisis, if we're not doing the small things like the potholes and the trash. So it's important that we continue to let people know that we care about both of those things and that it's not a zero-sum game, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate the work of her administration, Public Works Department. We were out on Friday in a neighborhood in Roxbury really dealing with the rat issue that we have in the rat burrows and addressing issues of trash. And so I commend a lot of the work of the administration. And the issues that we have to continue working on are the issues that we deal with, are the biggest line item issues in our city. How do we make our schools better so that every student can graduate from Boston Public Schools like I did and go on to Harvard Law School if that's what they want, like I did, or be an amazing actor, an engineer, or start their own company. We need to make sure that our kids really understand the fullness of their potential. We're not always doing that. There are some really great success stories, but I need that to be the standard for each of our students, whether they come from Mattapan, East Boston, Mission Hill, that your story is one of limitless potential, and we're not always doing that, and we got to get better. I have faith that the superintendent and the mayor and the city council and the school committee working together can help us do the work of ensuring education equity in all of our neighborhoods and having all of our students thrive.
Well, I look forward to continuing this conversation in your next visit here. This is your first time. Wasn't so horrible, was it?
It wasn't, John.
Okay.
You were good to me. Maybe it's all that turkey got you in a good mood. So.
Yeah, actually it did. I like Thanksgiving. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
And thank you for joining us again. Happy Thanksgiving to one and all. Now